Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the roundtable series for Sentinel Consulting. We're hoping to have a couple of these throughout the year. And the first one we thought we'd start off with was development and finance. So welcome, and I hope that you find this session informational. It's meant to be a discussion. So I hope that those who have attended, have some burning questions that they'd love to ask our experts about. Keep in mind they come with their own background and whatnot, and we do have two great experts that can help share a lot of wisdom to our team, to this discussion. So we have some introductions to go through. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the questions. We're going to go with some strategy, larger, higher level order questions. And then we're going to, maybe if we have some time, just take on a couple of operational questions. And at any point in time, please feel free to drop a question in the chat if you've got something that you'd like us or the panelists to discuss. And if you'd like, you can also go to support@sentinelconsulting.ca. Ben, if you could put that in the chat. Maybe some folks may be a little shy to ask a question. Maybe that's your way of asking. So go from there. So just a slight little disclaimer. This is not kind of like, this is not legal advice. All the points we're going to share and all the topics we're going to cover are high order topics, but hopefully they'll provide you some insight and they'll give you enough tools to be able to go back and to your organizations and think about what you're doing, and is there an opportunity to apply some of the concepts we've discussed to our discussion. And apparently Siri thinks she's part of the discussion, so we're turning Siri off too. So please consult with your finance team, with your advancement teams regarding any of this, if you want to implement any of these items that we've discussed. And I do want to define teams. Teams can be a team of one. If you are the one and only person who does this, I've used teams generically, but if you are the one advancement person or you're the one finance person in your organization, that may mean you may have to reach out to someone else. Maybe it's something that you have a discussion with the finance committee at your organization or with the advancement officers or CEO. So team is very much a generic term. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Kevin O'Donoghue and Arthur Peters to our discussion. Kevin is the accounting manager at Langara College. He has lots of insight from the world of higher ed, and he is located in Vancouver, and I'll give him an opportunity to introduce himself in a second. And then there's Arthur Peters, who's the executive director of the ShareLife campaign at the Archdiocese of Toronto. And he also comes with a wealth of knowledge in the industry, mainly in the religious vertical, but he's also an active member of the Knights of Columbus. And Arthur, I'll let you give us the exact title of your position, but I know he's very active and on the senior council there. So gentlemen, do you want to go ahead and give yourselves a quick intro? I did a very, very high level. If you could share your...
I guess I'll start. So I'm Arthur Peters. I'm the Director of Development for the Archdiocese of Toronto. So I oversee the annual appeal of the Archdiocese, which is called ShareLife. And through that, we provide support for 42 agencies. And last year raised over $16 million to support those agencies. In addition, we do all the development work of the Archdiocese, so plan giving, securities gifts, major gifts. We do electronic giving, and we're going to talk about that in the webinar today. We've also introduced online banking giving, which is a new method of giving. And so any way that people want to contribute to support our parishes or any of our archdiocesan entities comes through our office. And as Lucy mentioned, in addition, I'm very involved in the Knights of Columbus. I am actually the Deputy Supreme Knight, which is basically the Vice President of the Knights of Columbus worldwide. So I do that as well.
Yes. Thank you, Arthur. And Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin, and I'm the county manager for the foundation for Langara College. So it's a separate entity from the college. We have about just over 30 million in assets at the moment. We're a smaller foundation, sort of working to build up. We're recently established not too long ago. And if my background's in not-for-profit accounting, worked in a few other positions before that, working in some housing and also some community services.
And Kevin's being shy, but you're also a CPA and
Yes,
what are your other designations?
PGA, which is the legacy designation.
Okay. So we've definitely got a lot of information here and people with lots of knowledge, but the whole point is for everyone to be able to discuss because all of our organizations are at different points in their journey. And these folks are here to just provide some insight in terms of how they do it or they have done it at previous organizations. And but they're both leaders in their organizations. And I thought this would be a great way to do it because I know that when we talk with folks, one of the first things when we go in and speak to someone, they're like, yeah, you got to help the advancement folks. They don't get what we're doing if they're a finance folk that we're talking to. And then we'll talk to the advancement folks and we're like, we don't understand anything that they want us to do. So we want to bridge that gap and make sure that if these two teams work, I really, really believe like if we ever offer anything to our clients, that would be the one thing. If that's all we fix, then I think that we could help organizations with a lot of great stances. So we're going to go back some introductions about Sentinel Consulting. So if you're new and have never met us, we are a consulting firm that support solely nonprofits. So we work in what I call the unsexy side of fundraising. Operations basically are at the hub of everything. So the teams we work with tend to work with everyone from finance to major gifts to the CEO, the board, and often your chief cooks and bottle washers. So we like to be able to support through making sure staff are engaged with processes that work for you. If they are too complex and too clunky, that's when things fall off the bus. And so our goal is to make sure we try to streamline a lot of that. And a big part of that is staying on top of all the technology in our space. It is growing rapidly and the gap is only getting bigger. A lot of folks talk about the technology gap. So our goal is to offer solutions rather than just adding more technology. How are you going to work end to end to be able to get you where you need to be, which is promoting your mission and vision. Our services, we provide data management services. We provide RE and donor perfect training. Our two biggest databases we support, and now thirdly will be Salesforce in the next couple months, will be Razor's Edge, Donor Perfect, and Salesforce. So we are trained to be able to do all three of those and manage all three of those CRMs. But our services sort of go beyond CRMs. I like to say that we're sort of product agnostic because it's the principles that make the difference. We do provide custom reporting. For those of you who are RE shops, Power Automate and Power BI are the big applications that are being pushed by Blackbaud. So we are quite versed on our team. We have a team member that can help you with that. We have conversion services depending on where you are in your journey, or even CRM evaluations. But as I mentioned earlier, it's all about building a solution that makes sense. A lot of folks come in and say, is this the right database for me? It may not be that it's the right database. It's more the question of, do I have the right mechanisms in place? So do I have the right staff training? Do we have the right processes? Do we have the right end-to-end elements to help us get us through the journey? One of the things we have we're striving for here at Sentinel is an expression I use a lot, which is moving the ball forward. We all have very, very limited budgets in terms of what you can spend, but our goal is to be able to provide insight and practical insight that you can go ahead and say, you know what, that's pretty easy. I think I'm going to go ahead and try that in my organization. So that's what we've deemed moving that ball forward. And if you can continue to move that ball forward inches at a time, you'll be able to make a difference.
Lucy, you're on mute.
Not sure what's happening there. Thank you, Arthur. So some of the partners that we work with, we are Blackbaud Consulting partners, as well as ones with Donor Perfect. I have not officially put Salesforce in there because we are not official partners just yet. So, but that is forthcoming. We also partner with Global Philanthropic for additional consulting services. So if your organization works with us and you need someone to do prospect management, or you need that fundraising plan, or you need some other service, we work with a great depth of partners that can help you with that. And we also work with Omatic and Importacular, the folks at Zeidman. So our team works diligently to try to stay on top of all of that. So please let us know if you need any of our support. All right. We are going to talk now about, we're going to turn the tables over now to Kevin and Arthur. And we're going to start with a few strategic questions that we've sort of set up for them. These tend to be the questions that we see most often with our clients. So I see there's some stuff in the chat. I'm going to do my best to try to keep up with that. But if there is anything, please feel free to just raise your hand and we'll be able to get to your question. All right. So we're going to start with an easy one for these folks. And I'm going to ask them to describe their gift entry workflow, which is something that when we come in and we work with staff, that's what we talk a lot about. We want to make sure you understand end to end. And why this is important is because if your team understands all the different moving pieces, it tends to minimize some of the confusion and some of the errors that may come up from a data perspective. So, Arthur, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then the next question will lob over to Kevin. So do you want to talk a little bit about how the workflow works at the Archdiocese? Oh, now you're on mute.
There we go. Okay, so for us, it's a number of ways, and it depends on how the gift comes in. So the first thing is obviously simply the mail. The mail comes in, it's opened by our donation processing team. We classify it into the different areas. We have checks for ShareLife or checks for the development office or various campaigns within the Archdiocese. Sometimes we have cash. Most people don't think that people send cash in the mail, but we do receive, I can say, thousands of dollars in the mail in cash each year. Pardon me, if it is a check, our team then batches it together and deposits through a check scanner. We have a check scanner, we're tied to CIBC, and the checks are scanned and deposited to the CIBC bank account. And then after that, they are recorded in our database, the MCRM database. Now, as I mentioned, we do have different methods of giving. So another way that we do that, I just spoke about checks and cash. We have web banking, so people are able to contribute to the Archdiocese and to ShareLife using their bank account. In the same way that they pay their bills, they're able to make a donation to either of our campaigns through their bank account. So for that, we have to download reports or faxes. Some of the banks won't send us reports electronically. They still want it faxed. I know people will say what, but yes, no, there are still fax machines. So those are brought in, then downloaded, and then they have to be data entered. And at this point, they're data entered manually. And then we have online donations as well that come in through our website, and they are downloaded and they go directly into the database. And then for all of these, our team produces receipts. Either for the donations that come in directly, one-time receipts are produced. Monthly receipts are produced at the end of the year. The online donations get their receipts as soon as they make their donation. And for the web banking ones, we do receipts once a year because most people are donating it by that method multiple times some as many as 50 times. So rather than sending a receipt each time, we just send one receipt at the end of the year.
So Arthur, in your case, your team does the initial processing and manages and moves it over to the finance team.
Yep. We do the actual processing, if you want, and receipting, and then the finance is a different aspect. They deal more at the top end of it than the detail by detail.
Perfect. Yeah. Kevin, do you want to outline a little bit about what you folks do at Langara?
Sure. Yeah, like Arthur said, we have different revenue streams that come in. The majority of our donations come in online through our website, and they're automatically fed into our CRM. And then we don't really receive cash very often, but checks in the mail of our office admin will receive that, and then they will give them to my position, who will secure them, and then we have a database administrator who will enter the gifts into the CRM. And then with all of our gift batches, we have them reviewed by our advancement manager, just to make sure that everything's being coded correctly, that the data is correct at the point of entry, and I will also review it from a finance perspective. I think that really cuts down on any potential errors at the point of entry.
Perfect. And just to clarify that point, Kevin, your team, does it go to advancement first for the gift entry, or does it go to the finance team and then the advancement team for reconciliation to enter donations, or does it depend?
So our department is the advancement team. I work in the advancement team. And we only have one dedicated finance staff, which is myself. So it's all contained within the advancement team.
And I wanted to point that out, folks, just because I wanted to ensure that sometimes even larger organizations like colleges and universities may have a person embedded into the advancement team, such as Kevin, who's a team of one on the finance side, but he works very, very in cooperation with the folks in advancement. So thanks. All right. This one I'm going to shoot off to Kevin first, but let's talk a little bit about your reconciliation process, because I know that when we've helped team members and when we've helped clients, and back in the day when I used to work in advancement, reconciliation used to make me cringe because it was so complex. So maybe you can give some insight into how you do it at Langara, and then some maybe insights in terms of how to make it less cringy.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be cringy, but I typically reconcile once a month. But look back to your previous question with the data entry. If you're making sure that that's correct, that's the key starting point. And then I'll usually sync it up with our bank reconciliation. So I'm making sure that everything that's come into our bank is recorded in our CRM, as well as our financial system, and that those agree. So I think it's good practice to do it once a month with your month-end closing from a finance perspective. And then if there is anything that comes up that isn't reconciling, then you might reach out to the advancement team if there's the amount, like a EFT came through and went into the bank account and I don't know what it is, then I would reach out to them.
Sure. Arthur, can you give us some insight a little bit into the reconciliation process at the diocese? And I know the diocese is a little bit bigger than the college, so sometimes there is almost that, I find with some of our larger organizations, there's a little bit of that lee room that it's like, so if it's within a couple of dollars, depending on the financial person, they may not, it may not be as big a deal from a reconciliation person, or that's what I've been told. So I'm not sure if that's true or not.
No, I think our team works well with the finance department, and given the volume of transactions we have, they do work hand in hand. The reconciliations for us depend on what we're reconciling. because we have the ShareLife campaign, we have the Archdiocese, we have the credit cards, we have gifts of securities. So it depends on what we're reconciling, if you want. But generally, each month we reconcile the credit cards for ShareLife and the credit cards for the Archdiocese. And in order to do that, and these are the ones that come in online mostly, we have to reconcile with Global Payments, who's our payment processor, and then reconcile with our database as well. And then we pay that money out to the recipients. So the ones to the Archdiocese for the parishes get paid out twice a month, usually on the 15th and on the last day of the month, they'll get their payments. And then the ShareLife ones get paid out once a month to the ShareLife campaign. Then we have a separate reconciliation for all the other ShareLife donations. And I mentioned some of the ways that we do that: online banking, credit cards, checks, securities, gifts, etc. And again, we do that with Global Payments with CIBC, our bank, and that's done monthly as well. So it's quite an involved process depending on who we're reconciling and what we're reconciling.
Okay. And I know that you're talking huge volumes, and that around the end of the year it can get pretty busy on your team. So is there a touch point for both of you? And this doesn't have to be within your organization, it could just be in general. And Kevin, maybe this is a question more for you. Is there always a little leeway in reconciliation if it doesn't balance to the penny? I know there's always a discrepancy with credit cards, and
typically I would just get it to balance to the penny, but like you said, we're a smaller foundation, so we're dealing maybe with a little bit less volume of transactions, and it shouldn't really be hard for us to identify all the donations that are coming into our account. Now, from like an audit perspective, of course, there's a little bit of leeway for some discrepancies, like at year end, but we like to have it as clean as possible.
For sure. I just always wanted to know how much, I know there's always a little bit of a difference, and we'll talk a little bit about fees and how we can better track fees and where that's best handled. So we'll save that for our second section, which is more operational. So Kevin, I'll send this one to you, but in terms of how your fundraising teams and once again, I'm using teams generically, staff on the fundraising side and on the finance side, how do you guys identify issues? And can you give me an example of where you encountered an issue and either it could be resolved, or you're like, okay, we're going to have to just always keep an eye on this?
Sure. Yeah, there's always small issues that can come up, and a lot of the time it's due to how the gifts have been recorded. So if there was a mistake at point of data entry, or there's a change that happens down the road, or there's a mistake in the financial system, that can be identified by either myself or the advancement team during like a regular review. An example would be, we have regular scheduled pledge review meetings where we review our the gifts that we're expecting to receive. And I think on our last one, I noticed that one of them was still outstanding, but that donor had given a gift, but it was coded to a different fund. And then I followed up with the development officer who associated with that account and just confirmed that that was put to the wrong fund, then recoded it and then applied it to their pledge to eliminate that. So those kind of situations can come up, or could be directly from the donor, like we're issuing fund reports to them at year end is one big process. And then if they see something that they don't think is correct on their fund report, then we'll look at that. So it'll usually go through to the development officer, then to me, and then we'll review that together and then see if there really is something that was missed. And then, if that's the case, we'll make the adjustment.
Nope, folks, they said adjustment, no deleting. I don't care what database you're in, don't delete your records on the advancement side. I know people always ask that question. Should I delete that? Should I just delete it, re-enter it, just adjust it, leave the audit trail? Sort of what the finance folks really, really like. And I think it just leaves a good marker on there as well. Arthur, do you have, can you identify a little bit or outline a little bit of how your team works with the finance team at the diocese? And then how do you identify issues? And if you have an example of something that you've worked through, that would be great.
I think given our volumes, our biggest thing is making sure that we do reconcile. And you talked about how close, and I know Jessica Fennessy, our donation supervisor, is on the webinar as well. She can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we try to balance as close as we can to the penny. I know I'm a stickler. I like to see it right to the penny, but obviously we do what we can to make it balanced to the penny. One of the challenges we've had as we moved into a new database in the last couple of years is that there's been some issues in sometimes how the credit card is getting processed, especially online, because we have various funds. Sometimes it goes to the wrong fund or the wrong processor. Instead of it going to ShareLife, it goes to the Archdiocese or the Archdiocese ShareLife. Well, then the funds are for one campaign, but they're being processed under another campaign. So as a result, the reports that we have from the payment processor won't match what's in the database or vice versa. So that takes a working through, and I know our team does well in working with the accounting department when these issues to come up to look at, okay, what's the issue? Where are we off? They can, I guess, pinpoint down to which day are we off, and then look and see where the issue is and work together. They have to look at the reports from the database, to look at the reports from global payments, and usually in doing that, the issue gets resolved.
Yeah, and I should add for the folks who are here listening to these two speakers, at the Archdiocese of Toronto, there are a couple of different entities that Arthur's team processes donations for. So that's why when he talks about ShareLife versus the diocese, it is technically two entities. So they've got their own set of campaign funds and appeal structure for each of these entities. So sometimes it can get, I'm sure it can be difficult. And I know some of you do come from organizations where you have maybe multiple receipt stacks if you're an RE client, or just multiple campaign fund and appeal structures to keep things separate. Just to clarify that point. And Arthur, when there is an issue, is it a straight communication? Who tends to find those issues? Is it on the finance side, or is it on the development side, or a little bit of both?
It's probably a little bit of both. I mean, the accounting department will produce the reports from global payments, or hand us the reports from global payments, or show what they show, and then we'll see that doesn't match what we have, and then it's okay, how do we find it? Right. Okay. And I would say I'm pretty sure all of the time, but 99% of the time, the issue is either the payment process, or something was accounted properly, or a transaction got missed in our database, and we managed to correct it. I'm not aware of any issues where we have anything outstanding that isn't resolved. That's great. And that goes to the point of strong communication between both sides of the fence, right? You can't have this, years ago, I remember I met a client and they were having a hard time figuring out why reports didn't match, and why the CEO was like, well, finance gives me these numbers and fundraising gives me these numbers, and they're never the same. And it's true, they're not going to be the same because there's reasons for them. But if you can understand the reasons, that's the important part. But open lines of communication allow you to do that. It looks like we have a question from Camille. Camille, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Okay, maybe Camille's. I think she's typed it in the chat here, Lucy, yeah. And I could speak to that, because she was asking about the online donation.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
She says she can't unmute. There you go.
Yeah.
But basically, no, we don't give them anything at the time of the gift. But keep in mind, because they're doing this from their bank account, it's coming out of their bank account. So they will see it on their bank statement, or they will look when they're doing their online banking, they will see it. At the end of the year, when we issue the receipt, we do have people who will call us and say, you showed 52 transactions, I have 53 transactions. And we've had those situations, and they can, because of their online banking, give us a report of what days they made them. Some people are very meticulous about tracking. I do it on every Sunday, or I do it every day, or every certain day, etc. And then we go into our database and check and see. And there's been situations where sometimes we've missed entering one, but we do check. But I would say those are the few and far between. Most of the time, we match up to what they've done.
Camille, did that answer your question? You can shoot us a thumbs up or feel free to add a follow-up question. But for those who aren't,
jump in there as well.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kevin.
The process is a little different, but for our online donations, our system automatically sends out like an acknowledgement letter with a receipt. So tax receipt at the time they give the gift online.
Okay. Yeah, and Arthur, I'm pretty sure your system does the same. Like for online donations, you get an acknowledgement and tax receipt.
Actually, I was going to clarify that the process I mentioned is for the web banking. So when somebody donates through their bank account, when they donate online by credit card, yes, they get a receipt and acknowledgement.
And then send them an aggregate receipt at the end of the year for tax purposes. Yeah, Camille, if you're an RE donor, then yes, you can do that. Or an RE user. Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we'll see if that answered her question. But yes, you can. Some organizations do send those gift summaries because they are a good idea to send that to the donor just to make sure that their records match your records. If you've got a donor like me, I'm just like, yeah, that looks pretty good. But that's why I'm not on the finance side. All right, let's go to, we kind of touched on this already, but communication is essential when you're dealing with these two teams. And I think both Kevin and Arthur can speak to that. But I find that when communication is even more so of an important element for anyone who's in the middle of a capital campaign and you're trying to forecast, because I get those quite a bit. We get those questions quite a bit from our clients. So when engaging in forecasting, what challenges or insights can you share regarding how your organization handles some of these forecasting requests? And I know that it'll be different from organization to organization. But Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about how you do it? And, where are some of the gaps between the development side and your side?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a process we're still working to improve, but I think on the communication side of things, just having regular meetings. So we have forecasting meetings quarterly, as well as as I mentioned, our pledge review meetings also every 2 months, I believe, where we're following up on donations that are outstanding, and then on our forecasting, we're really working with the development team to figure out what opportunities they're working on, how much they are expecting to receive, is it confirmed, or so we're tracking that to give us our best projection for the revenue that we're bringing in. We're also, as we've just been working with your team, Lucy, to set up the opportunity tracking in our CRM, so that information is available sort of real time to the development officers. We also have, on the development side, they have their own separate meetings where they're reviewing opportunities, and they're working to build that gift pipeline into our CRM. And that aspect is also going to be incorporated into our quarterly forecasting meetings.
Great. And I know, as for those of you who are about to enter a capital campaign or in the midst, I know I think there's one client I saw in here that might have that. Those forecasting meetings can sometimes get a little bit challenging because what you're counting from a fundraising side versus what's coming in and what's in the system tend to be a little bit different. So I know that sometimes it becomes more of a timing issue, I think, sometimes more than anything else. Timing versus recognition. So I know the folks on the finance side tend to be more concerned about the timing of the donation, but I know the folks on the advancement side are equally as concerned about the timing of the recognition. So I think sometimes that can be a gap as well that we've encountered. Arthur, anything on your end from a forecasting and challenges or insight that you can share, that how you do things at the diocese?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us in forecasting is our annual ShareLife campaign. The way we do our allocations is we allocate funds monthly to most of the agencies. Some of them will get a payment once or twice a year, but a lot of them are getting a monthly payment. So for us, it's important to be talking to accounting about when our campaign is starting, when our collection takes place, and how much money we think we're going to raise, because there have been times where the accounting department, just because it's a timing issue, have had to advance the ShareLife campaign funds in order to meet our commitments. Because we do have our payroll commitments, we do have our operating commitments, and we do have the allocation commitments, even though the funds haven't started coming in yet. So that involves good communication with accounting and as you like projecting when we think revenue is going to come in and how much we think is going to come in, so that they can be prepared to make sure that we meet our obligations up to that point.
Yes, because many of your agencies rely very heavily on the donations coming in from the Office of ShareLife, correct?
Yeah, that they for some of these agencies, we are almost their entire, if not their entire budget. So it's important to them that they receive their funds. So we want to ensure that they get their funds. And as I said, the Archdiocese sometimes will back us up until the funds from the campaign start to flow.
Wow, that has got to be a lot of forecast.
Right. You're always looking ahead
and making sure someone's keeping track of it. Right. Thank you, Arthur. All right. We are going to, this one's going to be hopefully an easy one for you guys to answer, but how are fundraising and finance operations streamlined? And are there any reports or KPIs that are shared amongst your teams? Arthur, do you want to take that one? So I'll start with that one.
We're always looking for efficiencies in how we do our work and to do things better. When we started a capital campaign 10 years ago, and we're in the finishing end of a capital campaign, one of the things that we brought in was a check scanner, so that we wouldn't have to. We were at some point depositing 500 checks a day, so that we didn't have to create bank books and bank books and bank books of checks. We brought in a check scanner, which also eliminated the need to photocopy them because the scanner takes a copy of them. So that was one of the first things we did. We invested in the technology for the credit card payment system from Razor's Edge at the time when we were using Razor's Edge, because we had a high number of monthly donors donating by credit card, and that process made it easier. But even now, as we're that's all developed for us now, and as we wind up the campaign. As I mentioned, some of the things that we do now is our invoices are processed electronically. So rather than having to sign them off, they go to accounting. Accounting puts them into the software program, and then we approve them. And then a lot of times they're paying them online as well. So rather than cutting checks, that streamlines that process. And I can go in to the system at any time and see if an invoice has been paid or how much we've been paid against those invoices. We do a lot of our mailings with Canada Post, and we do that using their credit program, so we don't have to pay for postage each time, because when we drop our biggest mailing, which we're about to do, it's about 125,000 pieces, and you can imagine having to take that cash up to the post office to make sure that the mail can go through. And those payments are made online as well. And accounting, of course, as I said, now using a software program that allows these invoices to be paid that way. It all speaks to efficiency. And as we move forward in the next year, we're looking to introduce barcodes on our donation forms so that our donation processing will be even easier. And we're looking at investing in a portal to allow donors to update their personal information online, including their credit card numbers, their banking information, their name, their address, etc., which will eliminate a lot of the need that we have going on right now to call people when their credit card expires. I don't know in other organizations, but we get about, last month was a bit lean, but we usually get about 200 credit cards rejecting a month. And our team, and I'm quite proud of our team, sends emails, letters, and then starts phoning people to get that information. And we have about an 80% recovery rate. And last year we recovered over $1.2 million in credit card donations that were rejected, but then were brought back because our team was able to gather the information. I'm proud of the work our team has done to do that, because if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have that money back.
One thing to special note, Arthur's team is no longer on the Razor's Edge, but if you are on the Razor's Edge or Donor Perfect, you do have a donation portal that can be sent out when a credit card expires. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out. But I just wanted to make that one point of clarification, Arthur, in case anyone's wondering.
Yep.
It's like, I thought there is a portal already. You are on a different system, so that could be why that's it. But great. Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the efficiencies and if there's any shared KPIs between the teams?
Yeah, I think, Arthur really covered a lot of really great points there that probably don't apply as much to our situation. The college really has their processes set and streamlined, and they process most of the transactions that are, like the payments to students and for the awards. On our side of things, I think where we can work on efficiencies is, on the IT side of things, we can always look at improving processes. Also, just having a set of standard operating procedures for our team. I think one thing that has happened, because we are a small team, that when we have turnover in positions, people, leave, their expertise leave, and then it's hard to, fill that gap or catch up when you have a new employee come on. So we recently worked to, build out a standard operating procedure manual for all of our positions and processes. And I think that's going to provide some value going forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Just a couple of, I know some questions that people have sent over who either are here on the webinar, but others who may also be, who have emailed questions who may not be here, is, if you don't mind, I'm going to just shoot off some of these questions because we're down to the last 15 minutes. Candy just posted something on the chat. Does BBMS send notifications to donors when their credit card has expired? So BBMS does not do that. But if clearly you're an RE client, Candy, if you have the credit card updater, that's a way of recovering some of those credit cards. If not, you should have the expiry date in the Razor's Edge. And so you can query on that information as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Candy. All right. So this is a question that has always been a burning question for me. So I'm going to start off with this one, and this one's for Kevin. There's always unrestricted, partially restricted, and fully restricted funds from an accounting perspective. I always get confused. Can you define them? And then, because I really want to know, what is a partially restricted fund? So maybe when you define them, I will now know what that is.
Well, I'll start off with the easiest one. Unrestricted is, funds you can really use for whatever purpose that, management or the board will, find for it. So you can use it for, it's very flexible. You can use it for whatever you need. Usually that would be like operating costs, and you can anything you want. So that's the easy answer. Partially restricted usually is like a donor will give you funds for a specific purpose. That might be for an award to a student, for example. They'll say we'll give you, $5,000 to give to a student each year for a biology scholarship. So that money, you can spend it, but it has to be used for a specific purpose. So that's where the partially restricted comes into play. So you can't just take that and buy yourself a new, well, you couldn't do that with any of the money, but you can spend it on your operating costs for the year. You'd have to use it towards the purpose that is outlined by the donor. Usually that's in a deed of gift, or that'll always be in a deed of gift in our case. When we enter an agreement with donor, we put it in writing, and it clearly outlines what those funds can be used for. And then like permanently restricted is It's usually our endowment, so those funds will be given to us in perpetuity. We're not allowed to do anything with those. We can't touch that money. But within that donor agreement, the interest that that fund earns is used to fund that award for, you know, the purposes outlined in that deed of gift.
Okay, so endowments are fully restricted gifts. The partially restricted would be when I get that checkbox, when I get my university ask letter every year and it says you can go to the library, or it could go to athletics, or it could go to, you know, awards and bursaries. It means it could be used for any part of awards and bursaries or any part of the library, not necessarily buying books. Like, it's not as restricted as saying this will be used to buy books type of thing. That would be a partially restricted fund.
Yeah, so if you were donating to the library and you wanted your donation to go to the library, maybe it's a general fund for the library. It's not specific, but those funds need to be used for a library related expense.
Got it. All right, now I know. And then if anyone has some of those burning questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to continue with some of the questions that folks have asked. When preparing for the audit, are there any sort of reports or any data that you need from the advancement folks that would be helpful to you, that you aren't chasing around or take a long time to work on? But I would say probably, is there anything that development folks could provide to make life easier for you? Because I know that those audits can be pretty time consuming and grueling.
I guess that's for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the information I'll have, like, I think just having good communication between your teams throughout the year, I should have most of the information that I need. I think a little bit more on the operational side, may have to consult with, like, the executive director. But for the most part, I have the information that I need. But you know, any unusual transactions that could be coming up, usually the auditors will want to know about any events that have happened throughout the year that are significant or abnormal, or explaining just variances year to year. So one year the revenue was really high, next year it's a little bit lower. Just having an explanation for those kind of variances, and just high level operational overview.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't already, folks, if you are already folks that are on the call, the receipt report, especially if you're a Canadian organization, the receipt report that sits in mail, it does not sit in the report section of RE. In database view, that is your friend. So if you have never ever used the receipt report, please use that, because especially for Canadian organizations who have to file the T3010, it breaks down all your receipts, not based on cash, based on gift in kind and gift to stock, which is exactly how some of the data points that are required for the T3010. I know some other ones that people use very often are the gift summaries, the adjustment report and write-off report, especially if you're in a capital campaign. Those can be very, very helpful reports to you folks. And even if you're not in a capital campaign, I think that having that write-off report can be very helpful. Arthur, do you have anything that you, any tips or tricks that you folks prepare for the finance team? Since your audit's probably a lot bigger, I recall that the audit at the diocese used to take at least a couple of weeks, if not longer.
Well, yeah, and I know the auditors, we work well with the auditors. We have very good process, and we did switch auditing firms last year, but again, had a very good process going through with them. They will send us in advance which reports they're looking for, and our team will prepare them. They come here, they will come and ask for specific examples. They'll look for a specific donation or a specific bill payment. We can pull that out of the files. We show them where the files are. But generally, it's just, I think, as you talked about, working together. They don't just come in and then say, give us all this information. They send us in advance, this is what we're looking for, and our team produces that for them. So I think by having communication, good communication, and working together, we're eliminating any issues that'll come up along the way.
Yeah. And what Arthur's referring to, if you've never seen one, it's called an audit kit that a lot of the auditors provide, and they'll give you literally just a checklist. We need X, Y, and Z for during the audit, and preparing that in advance will definitely minimize the, hey, if the finance team comes to you and says, hey, I need this now. And you're like, of course you need it, because it is like the busiest couple of days I have, and you want me to pull a report. So definitely letting folks know when that audit is happening, helping them with the figuring out if there's anything from that kit that they need to provide. But yeah, if you haven't seen an audit kit or that audit package, please speak to someone on your finance team, and there actually might be reports that will help you. So sometimes I know I've worked with financial folks, and they'll be like, yeah, so this is the report I create every year, and this is really annoying. And then I was like, oh, you could get that report from the Razor's Edge looking like this. And they're like, oh, really? So please, definitely, for you advancement folks who are on the call, reach out and make their lives easier for sure. I'm sure that the finance folks will appreciate that. In the last couple of minutes before we wrap up, maybe we'll talk a little bit about, this question came up quite a bit, I think, from various users. Credit card fees. So this is a big reason why your donation database and your finance database will not match up one-to-one, right? So knowing that that's a gap, very important. But secondly is your different gateways. You're going to have different fees depending on the type of credit card. If you use BBMS, you've got one standard fee. If you use a different gateway, you've got different ones. What is the best way, or what is a way that facilitates that reconciliation? Maybe I'll pose it to Arthur first, because I know you guys have different gateways. And then Kevin, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of your thoughts.
Well, one of the things we did, Lucy, in switching to global payments, who we now use, is that the fees are pretty standard no matter which way they're coming in.
Okay.
So if they're using the online system, if we're processing it directly, if they're using one of our point of sale machines, and even now using the tip tap pay method, which we're now starting to roll out to parishes, the fees are the same across the board. So one of the benefits of that is we're not worrying about if you're doing it this way, it's this much, this way, it's this much. It's standard across the board. And one of the fortunate things we have, just given our volumes at the Archdiocese, is we're negotiating at a very high level because of the volume of transactions that we do. So that actually helps when we negotiate, because when we're talking the volumes, we are. I remember a conversation I had with one processor. They quoted me the standard rate, and I said, I don't think the person who does this transactions at this level pays the same rate of the transactions at this level. So tell me what my rate is. And we got a better rate just because of that. So, and that's something I'd encourage people to do, is if you're in volumes, negotiate your credit card rates. They are open to doing that. Don't just accept what they tell you. You should look at your volumes, and also aggregate your volumes if you're coming in at different methods, because you want to talk about a global number, not each entity having their own amount. So.
It's a good point. Very good point. And just to give everyone a sense of context, I think, Arthur, you're probably at, well, you said 16 million. So that is a lot of transactions.
The credit cards, we negotiate over $10 million. So.
Okay. So just to give people context of what we're talking about, that is definitely high volume for sure. Kevin, your thoughts in terms of like, what's the best way to track that? Some folks have put them in as gift attributes. What are your thoughts?
Well, we just, we record it as just the expense, as, as a expense to our operating funds. So we don't take it away from our actual donations. Like, so if someone's giving the money to a fund, every dollar goes to that fund, and we just absorb that operating cost of the fees. We're a little bit smaller than Arthur's side, so the fees, if you were receiving a large donation online, that would be a pretty significant fee. So you may suggest to your donor to give it, send in a check for that if it was a significant amount. But obviously we're not going to turn down a donation, but it could be, whatever percentage on $100,000 versus, just the fee
For
to
sure.
deposit a check is a big difference. But on the reconciliation side, our revenues will match with the CRM directly. So
wonderful. Yeah. And I know that folks are always talking about, some organizations do it as the cost to absorb it, like Langara, where it's a journal entry as a cost of doing business. Some organizations do it separately. But whatever works, consistency is also key. However way you're going to do it, consistency will be key in that factor. But yeah, ideally the donor will get the full benefit and the tax receipt. So $100, they make $100 donation online, they're still going to get $100 tax receipt. It won't be $99.50.
And that Lucy, applies the same to us as well. The donor receives the full amount. But I'd like to point out maybe just because we are talking about costs, if you want. You say it is cost of business to take a credit card donation. The cheapest way for a person to give electronically is the online banking, which I will tell everybody Lucy helped set up for the Archdiocese. And if anybody wanted to pursue that method, I'm sure Lucy could talk to you about that. That is by far the cheapest. Well, I'm giving you a plug there. It is by far the cheapest way to make a electronic donation. And I have donors who have stopped giving by credit card and are giving through the online banking because of the difference in what they would pay, what we would pay in credit card fees on that donation versus what it costs us to process it that way. So it is something that probably most organizations haven't thought of. But if you start to think about that, you will find quickly that your donors are concerned about what the fees are on their donations. Now, some people want their miles or their points or their rewards, and we understand that. But those who want to ensure that they're giving, that the organization gets the most, online banking is the way to look at it.
All righty. Just as we wrap up in the last minute, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out today. We really appreciate it. I also want to make sure that you're all, especially if you're in the Toronto area, but in general, we hope to see you at ICON. We will be there. We'll have a booth. It'll be in Toronto. Come by and say hello. And that's Frankie and Ben at our booth, I think last AFP conference. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our team. But more importantly, please start opening up those lines of communication with your finance team or with your advancement team, because I think that's going to make all the difference in the world. And thank you to Arthur and Kevin, who gave up so generously of their time and their knowledge today. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
There you go.